Today is September 9th, 2024, and Reactor Magazine has released chapters 12 and 13 of the Wind and Truth preview chapters. In this video, I'll be going through these two chapters and giving my thoughts. Chapter 12 is titled Beyond the Brands. We get a short epigraph in this chapter. It reads, "I was not with them. I did not know of their quest." This seems to imply that whoever is writing the in-world book, Knights of Wind and Truth, wasn't with Kaladin and Szeth during the upcoming events. So I think it's safe to assume that it wasn't Sil who wrote this in-world book. I've seen people speculate that it might be Jasnah that writes it, or even Sigzil. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. Then we get into the chapter, and this chapter's from Kaladin's perspective. We see that Kaladin's armor spren are now always showing as pinpricks of light rather than the typical ribbon look of most Windspren. I found this interesting because that's how they look in Shadesmar. So here are some quotes of Windspren. So here from Words of Radiance chapter 1, we see that Windspren are spinning through the air above. They look like tiny ribbons of light glowing softly, dancing around one another. And they can also take forms of different shapes. But in Oathbringer chapter 108, we see that Windspren and Shadesmar look like pinpricks of light. And now that I think about it, Kaladin was noticing these pinpricks of light surrounding him in Shadesmar, so those might have been his armor spren before he swore the fourth ideal. So it's a bit interesting that they're taking that form of the pinpricks even though they're in the physical realm. Kaladin and Sil are preparing to take the Oathgate to Azamir with Szeth, but first Kaladin goes to say goodbye to the rest of Bridge 4. When he finds the members of Bridge 4, he sees that they're having a celebration for Rlain, now that Rlain has bonded a spren. Though since Rlain's spren is a corrupted mist spren, or enlightened depending on your perspective, Rlain feels more out of place than ever. But Kaladin reassures him that he's still a member of Bridge 4. We see that Kaladin no longer misses Moash, and he plans to take Moash to task for all the vile acts he's committed. Kaladin gives a goodbye speech to the members of Bridge 4, and then a tattoo artist comes in and he gets the Bridge 4 glyph tattooed on his forehead. The last time he tried to get this tattoo, the ink wouldn't stay in his skin because he wasn't ready to move beyond his brands. But now that he's moved on and let the brands heal, the ink takes. Kaladin finally lets himself admit that he's done a good job with saving the men of Bridge 4. I'm loving this version of Kaladin who isn't constantly self-loathing. But unfortunately, I don't think these happy times are going to last much longer as we get deeper and deeper into this book. Sigzil confides in Kaladin that he doesn't think he can be the leader of Bridge 4, and he doesn't even know if he belongs as a Radiant at all. Kaladin seems to have convinced Sigzil that he is the right one to lead Bridge 4, but we'll see how that pans out. When Kaladin meets back up with Szeth, Szeth speaks of how he was once rejected and told he lacked truth. Truth is capitalized here, so that's interesting. Could that be referring to something more than it seems? Maybe another ancient spren. This chapter ends with Kaladin, Sil, Szeth, and Nightblood using the Oathgate to be transferred to Azamir. I'm wondering if the title of this chapter, Beyond the Brands, has a double meaning. I mean, at face value, it's obviously talking about Kaladin moving on from his slave brands, but I'm wondering if it has a second meaning of Rlain being a listener or a singer, getting power from one of the Radiant spren rather than one of the Void spren, moving beyond the brands of the fused. Chapter 13 is titled Promise. We get another epigraph, and we're told here that Kaladin and Szeth are the Wind's champions. So does that mean that they are both Knights of the Wind? That's something I hadn't considered before. What if there are multiple knights for both the Wind and the Truth? Maybe neither Kaladin nor Szeth are the Knight of Truth. Maybe Shallan is one of the Knights of Truth. I mean, that would kind of make sense, in my opinion. Both Kaladin and Szeth are of the orders that can fly through the winds. It really feels like Shallan fits the mold of being a Knight of Truth better than Szeth ever did, since she tells truths to progress through her Radiant Oaths. Let me know your thoughts on that in the comments. This chapter starts from Shallan's perspective. She and her group have arrived at the Azamir Oathgate in Shadesmar, ahead of that massive fused army that we saw in last week's chapters. Gallant, being the goodest boy, does a little prance as they land on the platform. Shallan notices a few beads acting very strange around her. They're following her around and bouncing up and down, and Shallan starts starts to wonder if there's some kind of illusion that she made unconsciously. They turn out to be creation spren that can take the form of beads. She picks one up and she gets the impression of various objects, constantly changing. So I'm wondering, is that what she used in last week's chapters when she kept finding the object she needed instantly? These creation spren beads also seem to be able to talk to Shallan in her mind, saying her name over and over. The Oathgate spren are acting weird, so Drehy flies Shallan up to have a word with them. Shallan notices that both of these Oathgate spren have been touched by Sja-anat. They tell Shallan that they're changing to no longer be of odium or honor, but free. They're now deciding for themselves who they're gonna let use the Oathgate. They plan to transfer not only Shallan's group, but also the fused army. So this is pretty bad. There's probably gonna be a huge attack on Azamir in future chapters. Also, as a quick side note, Shallan seems to think that Oathgate spren are transformed ink spren because they have the same mother of pearl luminescence. That's very interesting. As a huge spren nerd, I hope we learn more about this. And by the way, if you haven't seen my every known spren video, go check that out after this to learn all about spren. I'll link it in the description. The Oathgate spren transfer Shallan and her group back to the physical realm in Azamir. And as soon as they're back in the physical realm, all the sensations of the physical world hit Shallan, and she realizes how much she missed it all. Soon after they're back in the physical realm, Shallan's Shardplate locks in place around her. Those creation spren that were following her around are her armor spren. And these armor spren can apparently speak to her in her mind, but it seems they can only say her name. But either way, that's pretty cool. I didn't expect them to be able to communicate with her at all. We learned that this is this group of creation spren's first time as armor spren, and they're having to learn how to properly change the armor shape to best fit Shallan's needs. As they're trying out different shapes, it's ripping up her coat in a few places and it severs her satchel strap. Radiant has the very pragmatic worry that this might not be the only Oathgate that's going to be attacked by the enemy. For all we know, there could be multiple armies of fused heading through Shadesmar to attack all the different Oathgates at once. Luckily, this Azamir Oathgate is pretty heavily fortified, so if this is the only gate that's going to be attacked by the fused, it's probably the best gate to be attacked because it's highly defensible. While Shallan and her group wait to use the Oathgate again to travel back to Urithiru, Kaladin and Sil come to talk with her and Adolin, and Kal tells them of his upcoming journey to Shinovar. Shallan and Adolin try to convince Kaladin to change his plans and come back to Urithiru with them, but Kal's adamant that he needs to go to Shinovar. And Shallan notices his optimism, which is really cool. I really like seeing Kaladin be a little less of a sad boy for once. Shallan makes Kaladin promise that he, Sil, Adolin, and her will all meet for drinks after these upcoming events are finished and the world is safe once more. And then Shallan, Adolin, and the rest of their group go back into the Oathgate to head back to Urithiru. Shallan summons her Shardblade to activate the Oathgate, and she's surprised to see that it's Testament instead of Pattern that forms as the blade. And she starts to think about ways she can use both Testament and Pattern, and she thinks that maybe she'll try summoning one of them as a shield and one of them as a blade at a later time. They use the Oathgate to head back to Urithiru, and Shallan is surprised to see all the changes of Urithiru now that the tower is fully functional again. She plans to gather her Lightweavers and devise a plan for dealing with maraes. Then we get Kaladin's perspective. It picks up as he's watching Shallan and Adolin head into the Azamir Oathgate, and he starts tearing up. Kal, thinking like a therapist, reflects on how a relationship between he and Shallan might have been bad for both of them, and how their mental health issues would have fed on one another. He's happy that she and Adolin are together. Kaladin, Sil, Szeth, and Nightblood fly above the high storm and head off toward Shinovar. Kaladin is determined to survive the upcoming events. So we'll see how that goes for him. And this is the end of day 1. So all 13 of these first chapters took place over a single day. So I'm guessing that next week we'll get some interlude chapters, but we'll have to wait and see. And lastly, we get another sketch out of Shallan's sketchbook. This page describes what Urithiru looks like in the cognitive realm. And it reads, "The living tower appears structurally identical in Shadesmar, but made of infused crystal and glass glowing with light. Despite its ethereal aspect, the surfaces feel entirely solid to the touch. The presence of so many soul flames and emotions has attracted a variety of wild spren." I don't recognize this spren. No two of the gate spren are exactly alike. Do they match their counterparts at each location? And there's a note here pointing to a pair of Oathgate spren. This pair looks familiar. I wonder what that's hinting to. I guess we'll have to wait and see. The real world artist of this artwork is McSweeney. But yeah, these were just my thoughts. Let me know your guys' thoughts of these two chapters down in the comments section. I'll be making these videos every Monday from now until December 6th when Wind and Truth officially releases. So if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you know when the next part drops. If you enjoy my content, consider supporting the channel by becoming a channel member or a patron. I'll link both of those down in the description below. We also have over 100 members in the Discord server now, so if you want to join the conversation about all things Cosmere, be sure to join the Discord server. That's it for this video, guys. I'll see you in the next one.